Thrawn is not just a villain. He is not just another piece on the Star Wars chessboard. He is something far more dangerous, far more complex, far more necessary to this galaxy than most people realize. He does not command power like a Sith Lord, nor does he rally armies through fear like an imperial tyrant. He conquers with intelligence, with precision, with a mind that sees beyond the battlefield itself. And yet, despite everything he represents, despite the sheer weight of his presence, his story remains incomplete. Star Wars has always been about heroes and villains, about light and dark, about destiny and the battle between good and evil. But what happens when a character does not fit into those categories? What happens when a villain is not driven by hatred, not fueled by revenge, not consumed by arrogance, but by logic? Thrawn is not a man who seeks destruction for destruction's sake. He is not reckless. He does not crave power the way the Sith do. His every action, every maneuver, every victory is the result of careful thought, of meticulous planning, of an understanding of war that no one else possesses. This is not just about Thrawn himself. This is about what he represents. A new way of thinking, a new kind of story, a break from the endless cycle of rebellions and resurgences, of Jedi and Sith, of wars that never seem to end. Thrawn is the key to something fresh, something intelligent, something that Star Wars has been lacking for far too long. A movie or show centered around him would not just be another installment in an ongoing saga. It would be a shift, a turning point, a challenge to everything we think we know about this universe. In this video, we are going to explore why a Thrawn-related movie or show is not just a good idea, but an absolute necessity. We're going to break down what makes him such a compelling character, why his story matters, and how his presence could redefine Star Wars as we know it. If Star Wars truly wants to evolve, if it wants to break free from its own patterns, then it needs Thrawn. And by the end of this video, you will see exactly why. Thrawn is not like any other Star Wars villain. He does not rely on the dark side or brute force to get what he wants. He is a tactician, a strategist, a mind that sees the battlefield in ways no one else does. His brilliance makes him terrifying, and yet fascinating at the same time. What makes Thrawn different is his understanding of his enemies. He studies them, he learns from their culture, their art, their history. He does not just know how they fight, he knows why they fight. That kind of intelligence is rare in Star Wars. It is not just about who has the bigger fleet or the stronger army. It is about who can outthink the other, who can anticipate the next move before it happens. This is the kind of character that Star Wars desperately needs. Not another Sith Lord, not another warlord trying to rebuild the Empire. We need someone who challenges our heroes in ways they have never been challenged before. Someone who makes them question everything they believe. Someone who does not fit into the simple box of good and evil. The problem is, Thrawn has never been given the full spotlight he deserves. He was brought into Rebels, but even then, his story was not fully told. He was introduced in Ahsoka, but his presence felt like a whisper rather than a storm. His potential is being wasted, and that is why we need a Thrawn movie, or show. Thrawn is not just an Imperial officer. He is not just a villain with blue skin and red eyes. He comes from a world beyond the known galaxy, a place few have ever seen. The Chiss ascendancy is one of the most intriguing aspects of his story, and yet we have barely scratched the surface of what it truly is. Imagine a Star Wars story that takes us beyond the Empire and the Republic, beyond Jedi and Sith, beyond the politics of the known galaxy. A show or movie about Thrawn could introduce us to a civilization that operates in ways we have never seen before. The Chiss do not fight wars like the Republic or the Empire. They fight with precision, with careful strategy, with an understanding of conflict that goes far beyond brute force. There are mysteries here, secrets that could change everything we think we know about the Star Wars universe. The Force-sensitive navigators of the Chiss, the hidden threats lurking in the unknown regions, the reason Thrawn left his own people to join the Empire. These are stories that deserve to be told. Stories that could expand the universe in ways no other Star Wars project has done before. We have spent decades exploring the same conflicts, the same kinds of characters, the same types of battles. It is time for something different. It is time for Star Wars to evolve, to take risks, to step into the unknown and show us something new. Thrawn is the key to that. Thrawn is not evil in the way the Sith are evil. He does not seek power for the sake of power. He does not conquer because of hatred or greed. He does what he does because he believes it is the best way to protect his people. That makes him dangerous, because he truly believes he is doing the right thing. This is what makes him one of the most compelling characters in Star Wars. He is not driven by selfish ambition. He is not a puppet of the dark side. He makes choices based on logic, based on survival, based on what he believes is necessary. But that is the problem. How far can someone go before logic turns into cruelty? A show or movie about Thrawn could explore the fine line between necessary action and moral corruption. At what point does pragmatism become tyranny? At what point does strategy become oppression? These are the kinds of questions Star Wars needs to ask more often. We are so used to seeing clear distinctions between good and evil, Jedi versus Sith, Republic versus Empire. But what about the people who do not fit into either category? What about someone like Thrawn, who sees war as a game of survival, where emotions cannot be allowed to cloud judgment? That is a story worth telling. One of the most terrifying things about Thrawn is that he is almost impossible to defeat. He does not make reckless decisions. He does not act out of emotion. He sees 10 steps ahead of his enemies, and by the time they realize what he is doing, it is already too late. That kind of villain is a rare thing in Star Wars. When we look at past Star Wars villains, they almost always have a fatal flaw. Palpatine was blinded by arrogance. Vader was torn by his emotions. Kylo Ren was unstable, constantly battling himself. But Thrawn, he does not have those weaknesses. He is calm, methodical, and always in control. That is why he is so terrifying. You cannot intimidate him. You cannot anger him. You cannot throw him off balance. He does not fall for traps, because he has already seen them coming. That is what makes him different. That is what makes him so dangerous. He is not playing the same game as everyone else. If Star Wars truly wants a villain that feels like an unstoppable force, Thrawn is the answer. He does not need the dark side. He does not need superpowers. He wins because he is smarter than everyone else, and that is the kind of threat that would push our heroes to their absolute limits. One of the biggest problems with Star Wars lately is that it keeps repeating itself. Another empire, another rebellion, another Jedi with a destiny. It is not that these stories are bad, but they are starting to feel predictable. Star Wars has the potential to be so much more. A Thrawn movie or show could be the perfect way to break that cycle. It would not just be about good versus evil. It would not just be about lightsabers and the Force. It would be about strategy, about intelligence, about the true cost of war. It would add layers to the Star Wars universe that have been missing for far too long. Imagine a story where the audience is forced to think, where the heroes cannot just rely on their weapons or their courage. A story where every move matters, where every decision has weight. That is what Thrawn represents. He forces his enemies to think differently, to adapt, to grow. That is exactly what Star Wars needs right now. A shift in perspective, a new kind of challenge. A story that does not just rely on nostalgia or familiar tropes. A story that feels fresh, intelligent, and unpredictable. A Thrawn movie or show could be that story. Thrawn is too important to be left in the background. His story is too rich, too compelling, too different from anything we have seen before. Star Wars needs a Thrawn project, not as a side story, not as a footnote, but as a centerpiece. We have had countless stories about Jedi and Sith. We have had stories about smugglers, bounty hunters, clones, and rebels. But we have never had a story about a character like Thrawn. A story where the battle is fought with intelligence rather than brute force. A story where every move is calculated, where every choice matters. The Star Wars universe is massive, filled with possibilities that have never been explored. But it keeps falling back into old patterns, old ideas, old conflicts. A Thrawn movie or show could change that. It could push Star Wars in a direction that challenges the audience, that forces them to see the galaxy in a new light. This is the story that must be told. Not just for Thrawn, not just for his fans, but for Star Wars itself. If the franchise wants to grow, if it wants to evolve, if it wants to remain meaningful, then it needs something bold, something different, something brilliant.